The morning light drifted softly across the small farming village nestled along one of the many calm branches of the Nile. The sun had barely risen, its first pale glow spreading gently over the fields, where barley and emmer wheat swayed in the cool breeze. The houses of mud brick stood quietly, their walls still holding the lingering chill of night. Inside one such home, a woman named Hinat stirred from her mat, stretching slowly as the faint smell of last night's embers greeted her with its warm familiarity. She moved through the dim light of the single-room dwelling, where woven baskets hung from wooden pegs and clay jars lined the walls with silent patience. The household's grinding stone sat near the entrance, its surface smooth from years of careful use. Hinat knelt beside it, feeling the cool stone beneath her palms. She picked up a handful of barley, golden, dry, faintly sweet in scent, and scattered it gently onto the upper slab. With slow, steady pressure she began to grind, the rhythmic scraping blending naturally with the soft, awakening sounds of the village outside. The grains broke down gradually, releasing a warm, earthy aroma that filled the room. This flour would form the foundation of the day's meals, just as it had for generations. While she worked, her husband, Naked, stepped into the courtyard to check the clay pot where beer had been brewing overnight. The scent rising from it was mild and comforting, a mixture of yeast and sweet grain. Beer was a constant companion in daily life, nourishing, gentle, and far less strong than modern drinkers might imagine. It was part of breakfast, lunch, and supper, its soft flavor mingling with the taste of bread and vegetables. When the flour reached a fine, warm texture, Hinat set it aside and began shaping small loaves. Her hands moved with peaceful certainty, pressing and folding the dough, dusted lightly with chaff, into rounded forms. The village bakery, a communal space of clay ovens that radiated soft heat throughout the morning, would finish what she began. But first, the dough needed time to rest, covered with a damp cloth that smelled faintly of river water and the sun. As she prepared the bread, her young son slipped quietly into the room, carrying a small bundle of green onions from the garden. Their sharp, fresh scent brightened the air. He placed them beside a clay bowl where yesterday's lentils had been soaked until tender, their pale skins softened and ready for cooking. Lentils were among the most familiar foods in the household, simmered daily with garlic, onions, and small pinches of herbs, coriander, perhaps, or a handful of crushed saltwood gathered near the riverbank. Hinat smiled at her son's offering, brushing his hair lightly, noting the way his fingers still held traces of the soil from where he had plucked the onions. Outside, the village gradually awakened. Men made their way toward the fields, carrying wooden hoes and baskets. Children chased each other along the dust-softened lanes. Neighbors greeted one another as they fetched water from the nearby well, their vessels clinking gently against the stone rim. Smoke curled lazily from household hearths, carrying the warm scent of morning meals, bread baking, porridge simmering, herbs crushed under careful fingers. Hinat lit her small clay stove, placing a shallow pot over the crackling fire. Into the pot went lentils, onions, and a cup of water. The mixture simmered slowly, releasing a fragrant steam that rose into the still morning air. The scent drifted across the courtyard, mixing with the soft sweetness of warming bread. Naked took a seat nearby, dipping a small piece of last night's loaf into fresh beer, the crust softening quickly as it absorbed the mild drink. Such breakfasts were humble but comforting. Bread, beer, spring onions, perhaps a smear of date paste if the harvest had been good. The day moved gently forward. After sending the bread to the communal ovens, Hinot turned her attention to the small garden that grew behind her home. Rows of leeks, cabbages, and beans glimmered softly under the rising sun. The soil, nourished by river silt, held the faint scent of clay and warm water. With a quiet rhythm, she plucked a few cabbages with their crisp, cool leaves, collecting them in a basket. These vegetables would later be cooked into a thick stew, joined by garlic cloves and a bit of oil pressed from castor seeds. Nearby, an elderly neighbor sat sorting figs in the shade of a date palm. Their sweet fragrance drifted lazily across the garden, warm and rich. Figs, dates, and grapes provided much of the sweetness in an ordinary Egyptian home, simple desserts eaten as they were, or mashed gently into pastes for spreading on bread. The fruit's soft textures and natural sugars added a comforting finish to meals often centered on grains and vegetables. As midday approached, Hinot returned to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Nakhet would return from the fields soon, dusty and warm from the sun. She placed a larger clay pot onto the stove and filled it with beans, broad and pale, softened from soaking, and added a generous handful of fresh leeks. The pot emitted a gentle bubbling sound as it heated, a quiet, soothing rhythm that filled the room. The scent of cooking vegetables drifted outward, meeting the dusty smell of the road as workers returned home in small groups, their steps slow, their conversations soft. Lunch was simple: bean stew seasoned with herbs, bread still warm from the ovens, and a small bowl of pickled vegetables whose sharp aroma balanced the deep, earthy flavors of the meal. Pickling had long been a familiar practice, one that offered variety through stored turnips or cucumbers steeped in brine. The family ate together in the shade of the courtyard awning, letting the warm breeze carry away the heat of the midday sun. After the meal, the village rested in the quiet afternoon calm. Children played with clay toys in the dust, tracing gentle lines with their fingers. Women sat together weaving mats or preparing ingredients for the evening meal. The sounds softened: the distant bray of a donkey, the muted cluck of hens scratching in the yard, the occasional soft thud of a wooden pestle grinding herbs. It was a time when the day seemed to stretch peacefully, holding everyone in its warm, unhurried embrace. As late afternoon approached, Hinot began her preparations for supper. She gathered a small fish from the shared store near the river, a simple offering caught that morning, its scent fresh and delicate. Not every family ate fish daily, but along the Nile, it appeared often enough to add variety to meals. She cleaned it with slow, careful strokes, then rubbed its skin with crushed herbs before placing it over a small fire. The aroma that rose was gentle, blending with the earthy smell of stewing vegetables and the faint smokiness of the hearth. Meanwhile, dates were sliced and laid out on a clay plate to share as a sweet ending to the meal. Their sticky texture and honey-laced scent caught the last of the golden daylight as it filtered into the courtyard. The sky outside softened into shades of rose and amber, carrying with it the familiar coolness that signaled evening's arrival. When Nakhet returned from the fields, his shoulders relaxed at the sight of the meal, simple, comforting, and familiar. They ate quietly beneath the darkening sky, savoring the mild sweetness of the dates and the warm, satisfying flavors of the fish and vegetables. Their daughter leaned against her mother, tired from the day's play. Lamps flickered softly in the neighboring homes, casting warm, wavering light across the village lanes. After supper, the family shared a final drink of beer, its gentle flavor calming in the cool evening air. The fire slowly died down, leaving behind a faint, glowing warmth. Across the village, similar scenes unfolded, families finishing meals of bread, beans, leeks, fish, fruits, and herbs, all woven into the peaceful fabric of daily life. As night deepened, Hinat and Nak settled onto their mats, listening to the soft chorus of nighttime insects outside. The smells of the day lingered faintly, the sweetness of dates, the earthiness of lentils, the warm scent of baked bread. Their eyes grew heavy, comforted by the steady rhythm of life, the quiet certainty that tomorrow would bring the same humble meals, the same gentle routines, and the same soothing breath of the Nile, guiding the days forward.